Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be checking out Xiaomi's new lineup of laptops. This is the Xiaomi Mi Notebook Pro series. This is a new lineup from Xiaomi, and from the looks of it, of course, this is Xiaomi. This is going to be an impressive laptop for the price point, but who knows? We'll get right into it, and we'll see what makes this thing special. So first of all, let's go over the specs. This thing has a 15.6-inch 1080p IPS display, which is going to be the usual beautiful Xiaomi displays that they have on their laptops. And thanks to that size, we get actually a pretty generous amount of ports on this thing, which we'll be checking out in just a bit. And yes, this is also equipped with the latest line of CPUs, and that would be the Intel Kaby Lake R series. Now, you would think this would be the Coffee Lake, because the CPU name started with an 8, but it's not. But what we have here in front of us is the i5-8250U. And yes, this thing does come with an i7 variant, and there are actually 3 different variants, which I'll tell you about in just a bit here. But what makes the i5-8250 CPU really special is that it actually has 4 cores that are hyper-threaded. So you would actually get 8 threads on your i5 CPU, which is really awesome. Especially if you want to save some money, you're going to still get that really good performance. So it's going to be really exciting to see how that will perform. But quickly finishing on the specs here, the rest is very similar to the previous generation, the Mi 13 laptops. But what we have here is 8GB of DDR4 RAM. The i7 variant can come in 8 and 16GB of DDR4. And no, the RAM here is not upgradable. So what you get is what you have, and you cannot upgrade it. But what you can change and upgrade and add more of is storage. What we have here is another 256GB Samsung SSD. That is an M.2 NVMe SSD. So what you're going to be getting is some really nice high-speed storage. And you can actually have 2 M.2 NVMe SSDs on this thing, and of course as well on the previous generation of the Mi 13. And lastly, of course, we cannot miss this thing, and that would be the MX150 GPU, which has 2GB of dedicated VRAM, and it's pretty much like a GT 1030 on a desktop range, but it is a really awesome GPU. You can play games on 1080p very well. Really excited to see how well this is going to perform on top of the i5 CPU here compared to the Mi 13. And we're going to also be comparing this laptop, to, of course, to a MSI laptop right here. It's the MSI gaming laptop. It has an i7 and a 1050 Ti GPU. And in the future, we're going to be comparing this thing to these 2 laptops right here, the Mi 13 2017 edition and the MSI GL62M gaming laptop. And we're going to be seeing how well they perform, what the performance is like compared to each other, and if this thing is worth getting. And the last thing that makes this thing special is it has this awesome looking space gray aluminum body. And yeah, without further ado guys, let's just get right into it. As always, the box is very simple and straightforward, nothing crazy going on, it's simple, and yes, it reminds me of Apple. But anyways, who cares about Apple? Let's take a look at this thing. So we get some really nice padding, and yes, this thing actually did come very nicely packed. This thing actually came in 1, 2, and 3 boxes. So we get 3 times the protection. Of course, this was shipped by DHL, but that is that. Now, one thing I didn't want to mention is that this box felt really heavy when I was picking it up. This is a really heavy box, and that's because of this laptop right here. It does feel heavy, and it's a notebook, not an ultrabook. It's going to be really interesting to see how it compares to the Mi 13 series, which is also an awesome series laptop. Now, this is going to be all in Chinese, all the manuals and everything is going to be in Chinese, even the Windows and the BIOS. The BIOS is easily changed to English, and Windows you're going to have to reinstall. But after you do that, you're going to get yourself a really unique laptop that nobody else has around you, and you're going to have a fantastic time with it. Alright, so this time we actually get a much better, nicer charging adapter for your laptop. Unlike before, the adapter had a non-exchangeable cable. So if the cable frayed or broke, you're pretty much screwed and you had to replace this thing. But this time we get a adapter that hooks up through a USB Type-C to USB Type-C cable, which makes this thing really future-proof, and it's going to definitely last much longer than this guy. Not to say the old one's bad, but this is going to definitely last much longer in the long run. But anyways, the charger here is also voltage adaptable, so it can do 5 volts all the way to 20 volts at 3.25 amps, so it never loses that 3.5 amps throughout the whole thing. It can do 100 to 240 volts, and yeah, this thing is going to work everywhere, and you can even charge your phone with it. That is if you want to do that, and that is actually pretty much it for the box. You get a manual, charger, cable, and the laptop itself, and that is really all we care about. Nice to have a very simple and straightforward unboxing. But anyways, let's finally go ahead and take a look at this laptop right here. Oh yes. Oh yes. That feels fantastic. This space gray aluminum body, I love it. It looks amazing, I gotta say. Now, one thing that did change on the back here, you're gonna notice that the audio has changed to Infinity Harman. Unlike before, we had AKG Dolby Audio, and it actually beat the gaming laptop that I have when it comes to audio quality and clarity and loudness. And yes, it also had some bass, but this time it seems like they switched that for some Infinity Harman, so it's going to be interesting to see how well it sounds. I heard that sounds amazing as well and kind of improved over the old one. Alright, so we got some ventilation holes intake, and seems like, and the exhaust is going to be around the back here. We got the dual stereo downward firing speakers, high quality rubber feet right here, and 10 T5 screws in order to get to the back panel, which we'll be taking a look at later on in this video or in the future review video. Now let's flip this over and take a look at this beautiful top that does not have any branding on it. Now this is what I love about Xiaomi with their laptops. There is no branding whatsoever around the whole thing, and the back here is just a sticker. You can take that off, and the only branding you're going to find around this thing is right here and inside under the screen. Very simple and sleek looking. This also feels amazing. This space gray is simply beautiful. Alright, so the front here, that's where we get a lid. In the back there's nothing. But where things get really exciting is when we take a look at the I/O ports. On the left side, we get an HDMI port, 2 USB 3.0 ports, and a headset jack. So far so good. We already get 2 full-size USB ports and a full-size HDMI out port. So that is really awesome to see. And of course, not only that, you get that headphone jack. So I'm not even going to mention Apple. Oh, I did. Too late. Okay, and if we take a look at the right side, we get even more ports. We get 2 USB Type-C ports. No, none of them are Thunderbolt, unfortunately, but that is okay. As well as an SD card reader. So, yeah, definitely more ports than the 2017 edition Apple. That said, Apple has Thunderbolt, and their laptops cost double or triple as this guy right here. Anyways, a pretty generous amount of ports. As you guys have saw, 2 USB Type-C ports, an SD card reader, full-size HDMI out, and of course, 2 full-size USB 3.0 ports. Very exciting. Let's go ahead and finally open this bad boy up. Alright, check that out. Now, 13 inches and 15.6 inches, there's a huge difference between both laptops here. And both of these guys are 1080p IPS displays. But just for reference, let's put this guy right here, the 13-inch laptop, and you can see it's pretty much carrying it as a baby. This thing is a little kid right here and sitting inside of it. And opening it up, check that out. And just for fun, let's put the GPD pocket inside of that as well. So yeah, pretty interesting size comparison. So yeah, we'll be comparing both these laptops in a future video. But for now, let's take a look at what this thing has in store for us inside. And yeah, let's take a look. So on the top, we have a webcam and 2 stereo microphones. So right there, very slick looking, very minimal in design. You can barely notice it. Of course, we got the 15.6-inch IPS 1080p display with the simple Mi logo branding right there, which looks fantastic. This is an old glass display, glossy display, which is going to give us some really nice color reproduction, but also is going to be really glossy, so be careful of what shines into your display and into your eyes. Anyways, let's take a look at the keyboard and touchpad here. It feels great, it's fantastic, it is aluminum, and you can easily find out where it is and where the ends end. We also have the Windows Hello fingerprint reader, which works 100% of the time, and it is a pleasure to use every time you want to log into your computer. It works instantly without any problems whatsoever and without any misses. And it never fails to hit the mark when it's logging in. It instantly works, and it gets right into the windows, and it is just really fast. And finally, we have the chiclet keyboard that has been enlarged from the previous B13 laptop. The spacing has also been changed, and of course, we have that really nice tactile feel when typing on this thing. Here's what it sounds like. So yeah, I would say some really nice feedback. And yeah, let's turn it on.
你好，我是小娜，让我来。
So yeah, it's in Chinese. Let's go ahead and make that tutorial video, reinstall Windows, and we'll be back in just a bit. And we're back, and I've reinstalled Windows, and I'm almost done making the tutorial video, which I'll be uploading right after this video, once I'm finished with it. But yeah, the first thing I want to test out here is if it can handle a 4TB heavy external hard drive. Your usual hard drives are about this big, the external ones, which are usually used in laptops. This one right here is a 4TB external hard drive. And if you rip open this guy right here, you'll get a hard drive that is twice as big as the one inside of here. So let's find out if it's going to read just fine. Alright, so far so good. And there we go, we're inside. Now one thing I was really excited about to show you guys here is the i5-8250U CPU. From now on, future laptops are all going to have i5s with quad-core hyper-threaded CPUs. And check that out, that looks beautiful. 8 threads right there, ready to do some real work, and yeah, that is really exciting to see. We can also see the DDR4 memory, 8GB of RAM. It's running at 2400 MHz. Now it does say slots 2 out of 2, but obviously, as we have stated before, it's not upgradable. If you want 16GB on this thing, you're going to have to get the i7 16GB version of this laptop. And that's that. The storage, on the other hand, here is a Samsung drive, just like before. And let's go ahead and do a quick test. So here are the SSD results. Now this segment of this SSD storage speed was actually re-recorded as I was finalizing this video. It's 20 minutes long, it's pretty painful, but I did go ahead and reinstall some new drivers from Samsung's website, restarted the laptop, and redid the test multiple times. And these are the consistent results that I was getting after the driver update. So they're pretty fast. They're not as fast as the previous laptop, which is the Kaby Lake 2017 edition of the Air 13. That said, all three laptops that I have tested so far, the 2016 and 2017 Air 13 and this Notebook Pro, they all have the exact same model number of the Samsung SSD. Which begs the question, is it a problem of the M.2 slot not having enough lanes to run the SSD, and they keep changing it every time they make a laptop? Is it a problem of drivers, which is most likely because after installing the new drivers, we have got much better results? Or is it simply a problem of the SSD batch being random? Or is it simply that Samsung is selling some kind of special batch that they put aside to sell for cheap to companies like Xiaomi, and that's how Xiaomi is keeping the cost down for their laptops? Either way, I'm going to do some heavy testing, swapping out SSDs in different machines and different tests and different drivers, and try to find out if you can get any better results and see if there is actually a problem or that's just how the SSDs are. Either way, right out of the box, if you do update the drivers from the Samsung website, these are the results you're going to be getting. They're actually not bad, they're really good. The read speeds are pretty fast. The write speeds are fast as well, but not as high as we would like. That said, you're probably not going to be doing too much writing on this 256GB SSD. If you're a content creator, you're most likely to go ahead and install a new SSD on the second slot with a 512 or 1TB SSD and NVMe storage. So there you go, pretty good results if you ask me. Here is a quick Cinebench test. Alright, so as you guys can see here, the performance is huge compared to the previous generation laptops or CPUs from Intel. We are getting 556 CB. This thing is actually getting really close to my i5 4690K that is actually overclocked in some cases. This is actually pretty amazing, and if you compare the CPU to the Skylake Edition CPU of the i5, the performance here is almost double, which is actually pretty amazing for what we are getting. In just 2 generations of Ultrabook CPUs, we have already got double the performance, which again is awesome. And lastly, before we go ahead and test out the audio quality on this thing and play some games, let's go ahead and take a look at some synthetic benchmarks. Alright, so here are the results. On the right side we have the Mi Notebook Pro, and on the left side we have the Mi 13 2017 edition laptop. So yeah, the benchmarks speak for themselves, and you can see that there's clearly a big difference, and the faster CPU definitely came in handy in the GPU utilization. You can see on the Mi Pro, we have 100% GPU utilization, so the GPU was not bottlenecked by the CPU. Unlike the Mi 13, the GPU was bottlenecked by the CPU, and it had about 4% more that it could use up from the CPU. So there's a definite improvement. On the SP benchmark, we get about 280 more score on top, and on the Heaven benchmark, we almost get double the score, which is pretty impressive. Alright, so let's go ahead and see what the speaker sounds like, and then we're going to run some games and see what the performance is like and compare them to the previous model. Let's go. Alright, so as you guys have heard, these speakers sound phenomenal. Simply awesome. And once again, they are clear, they are loud, they are bassy, and they're just really crispy. I mean, they sound really round and dynamic. Everything about it is just really awesome, honestly. These are one of the best speakers I have ever heard on a laptop. And I have worked with a bunch of different laptops from different brands and tiers, and yeah, this thing is simply beautiful when it comes to audio. So yeah, let's go play some games.
Funny business. You know what you're looking for?
The Institute is now the undisputed authority in the Commonwealth. Have a nice day.
You cause trouble, there's gonna be trouble. Got it?
Alright, so once again, the gaming performance here is very good, and you guys have saw the performance is actually much better than the previous generation Air 13, and that is all thanks to this new generation of CPUs that gives the i5 a quad-core 8-threaded chip, which is pretty awesome. Now, the i7 on this generation as well will come with a quad-core 8-threaded chip, so you're not going to get anything extra, you're just going to probably get some extra clock speed. So either way, which one you choose, you're still going to be getting some solid performance, unless you want to go for the 16GB edition of this laptop. Then you'll be forced to get the i7. Either way, you're going to be getting some really nice performance. Now, let's move on to temperatures real quick, and let's take a look at what the temperatures we have right now. So right now, we're just running Heaven Benchmark, and it's not really starting out the CPU. In fact, the CPU is just chilling at 14%, which is pretty cool. But right now, the temperatures are hovering around 60 to 64 degrees Celsius, which is actually pretty good. So let's go ahead and see what the surface temperatures are like. If you take a look at what the CPU and GPU are, they're hovering at around 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, which is actually pretty okay. And around the keyboard, it is hovering at around 35 to 40, depending on where you point it. And if you take a look at the palm rest and touchpad area, it is hovering at around 30 degrees Celsius. So there's definitely a big improvement when it comes to temperatures and performance when comparing this thing to the Air 13, and that is for sure. The Air 13 models, they get pretty hot really fast. There's not a lot of cooling they can pack into that thing, but what they did pack is performance when it comes to CPU and GPU. But this thing has a much better chassis and much better cooling, and I have noticed it because the heat dissipation is much better, and overall it was very tolerable when it comes to using the laptop while you have your palms on the keyboard and touchpad. And that is really good. So yeah, so far so good. And there's one last thing to test out, and that would be the SD card test to see what the performance is like on the built-in SD card reader. Is it a USB 2.0 or 3.0? Yep, that's disappointing. So it's a USB 2.0 SD card reader. At least they tried and included an SD card slot. Unlike other companies, they just take out the SD card slot and don't give you anything back. And they'll go tell you to get a dongle. And honestly, they at least included one just in case if you forget to bring your dongle. Although it's slow, and that's disappointing, and hopefully they'll fix that in the next version. At least we have an SD card slot. So if you forgot this, you're not completely screwed. So that's that. So this was just a first impressions video to see what this thing is like right out of the box. And you guys have saw pretty much almost everything. We have tested the audio, we have tested performance, did some benchmarks, and we almost covered most of the main stuff that you're going to be noticing when you first take this thing out of the box. Backlight bleed, I haven't noticed anything too major. It's just your typical kind of pattern. I'll get into more detail on that in the full review. And hopefully very soon, in the next upcoming videos for this thing, we're going to have a video on the full review. We're going to have a video dedicated to benchmarks and games. And we're going to have a bunch of different videos comparing this to different laptops, especially the Air 13 and the MSI GL62M. And maybe a whole showdown comparing all of them together and seeing which one is worth your money. Which brings us to the last point, is this thing worth its money? Well, it depends on you, and it depends on what exactly you are looking for. We're going to try to answer that in the full review, but for now, only get this thing when it is on sale, which it usually is, especially coming from Gearbest. But not only that, keep your eye on this video, because I'll be updating it with coupons as I get them from Gearbest. Right now, there's actually a coupon for $980, so that's actually a pretty good price for this thing, especially if you compare the performance and gains you'd get from this thing compared to the Air 13 if you were looking at that one. So to sum it all up, you're getting a bigger screen, you're getting much better performance, much better temperatures, a larger touchpad, a larger keyboard, and a couple more ports. But other than that, you are getting a really nice looking laptop that is very unique, and pretty much no one around you is going to have this thing. So anyways, that is actually pretty much it for this video. Let me guys know what you think about this thing. I'm going to try and include the things that you guys have suggested in the last video, which is the Xiaomi 2016 and 2017 of the Air 13. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone. Oh yeah, there's actually one more thing that I forgot to mention, and that the hinge on this thing is actually really good.